Hey, I'm Pessy. Welcome back to my channel or podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, hi. I'm glad to have you here. I'm Pessy. I'm a certified personal trainer, nutrition coach. I'm just really passionate about health and wellness for the mind, body, and soul all around. Specifically for busy people who are striving to get that more balanced and fulfilled lifestyle when it's hard to with a chaotic schedule and just feeling like you have no time. But today's talk is going to be my top tips on creating goals for your New Year's resolutions and just the mindset going into the new year of 2024. The most important aspect of trying to think about and figure out how you want your new year to go is being able to visualize like what kind of lifestyle you want. Figuring out within yourself what do you enjoy and how you want your life to be and what your specific priorities and preferences, overall what your ideal life looks like, because at the end of the day it's going to be hard to be able to come up with any type of goals or action plans or anything if you don't really know what you want out of life. So my number one tip is to just try to self-discover and put more time into really connecting with yourself and understanding yourself so that you can understand what you want out of life, what would bring you the most fulfillment, because it's hard to make steps to bringing yourself fulfillment without really understanding what is fulfilling to you. That being said, you don't have to have it all figured out. A big part of it is just, you discover yourself as you go. So, but it's just good to have some type of idea of like the ideal lifestyle that you want to be living and where you see yourself in the future and what exactly is your, big picture lifestyle goals, right? Once you have some type of picture or idea of what the ultimate vision would be for you and what your big overall goals are just for life, then it gives you the ability to go further into smaller goals and smaller steps. Break down your big journey into little chunks. So then you can actually have something to work with for a year goal, because going into 2024, my first tip, I guess, is I think the biggest problem people usually face whenever they create their New Year's resolution, their goals for the new year, is really not being realistic with their goals and not really understanding what kind of spectrum your goals need to fall into. So this is where I bring up SMART goals. And SMART goals, I don't know if you've heard it before. I've heard it in many different scenarios, many different teachings and education processes. I think it's a very good tool to use in any type of setting where you're making goals. And SMART goals basically is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. These are the 5 qualities that you should have for every single goal that you are setting for yourself in 2024. So let's just go over the 5 aspects of this goal setting priorities really quick. So the first one is specific. The reason why you need to be specific is because if you have some type of vague goal, it's going to be very hard to understand what type of steps to take if you don't even understand what the end goal is, right? And then it's harder to really envision yourself meeting that goal when you don't even really have a good understanding of what that goal is. So the first thing is you need to be really specific with your goals. And then it's measurable. Measurable means you can go through the process and be able to measure where you are in the process of reaching that goal, and there is some type of way that you can keep track of how you're doing. So measurable is important. Then it's achievable, which achievable is so important. Achievable is kind of like an abstract concept because as much as it's easy to just say make an achievable goal, what is achievable for every person will seem different, right? Like I can have specific goals that I could say are so achievable for me, but someone else could be like, oh, I could never do that. And I think achievable can look different from everybody's own perspective, and some people would think someone's crazy for having a certain goal and thinking it's achievable in general, and other people will think other people are crazy for having their own goals. So I think achievable is a very subjective term, but for yourself, I would use it in a way of try and grasp your own confidence and understanding of what you believe you can achieve. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard to achieve something that you do not believe you can achieve, right? So it should fall under the lines of wherever your confidence is in that area. And also sometimes it's just like physically and emotionally. There's certain laws of nature that fall into place with certain types of goals. And in that case, you know, certain things are achievable versus unachievable. I guess a goal would be if someone said they wanted to lose like 50 pounds in 2 weeks, and that's just like unachievable because, you know, it's just not how the human body works naturally, and it's just almost like basically it's impossible. So I guess you can use it in literal terms, but I think it's important to just understand where your belief, your confidence, and trust in yourself is, and then based off of that, you have to measure whether or not you think it's achievable for yourself, or if it's just some type of like far off dream, right? Realistic is the same kind of concept as achievable. So the same things I just said for achievable. And I think it also is very subjective, the word realistic, because what is realistic for one person will be totally different than what is realistic for another person. I know so many times I've been faced with people that have been like talking about goals they want to achieve and dreams they want to achieve, but saying that, but that's not realistic, that lifestyle is not realistic, that job is not realistic. And in my head, I'm like, that's not how my mind works. Like, I have heard so many people call things unrealistic and saying, oh, I'm just being realistic. And in my head, I'm like, that seems very realistic for me. Like, so basically it's very subjective. And again, this is like being able to understand yourself and how you view the world. Being realistic with your time, which brings me to the last one, which is timely. Being realistic with your time, which is like if you're able to view your overall schedule of life, you know, your daily life, weekly, monthly, and seeing like, oh, well, I have time for this or I don't have time for this. Like if you're saying you want to do like 3 hours of working out every day and you're just like, well, I only get home at 6 and then I have to feed the kids at this time and then I have to clean the dishes at this time, and then it's like, where even would the 3 hours fit? So it's like you have to be realistic with your time in that sense, where you're able to actually be realistic with the time and the day that you have to put towards this goal. And timely just means that you're able to put this goal into the year of 2024. Because I think a lot of people, what they do is they put their overall life goals, right? Like if you were making a vision board or something for 2024 and you are putting on the vision board like your overall goals of life, like owning this huge like $100 million mansion. I heard someone talk about this, like owning this huge $100 mansion and like this Lamborghini, and then like, or owning this like multi-million-dollar branched business, right? That is like goals that will happen in years from now, or maybe it'll happen earlier, you know? I'm all about that, like spontaneously things happening faster than you expect it. But it's important to put down to understand that where your goals lie, you know? Like obviously it would be great to have those goals happen this year, and you can still have that obviously on your board, but let's make goals that can actually fit into this year span. In this 12-month span, what are the goals that you can achieve just in this year, not in your overall life, right? Okay, so that brings me to the end of like the SMART goals, which will bring me to my second tip, which is embodying the law of assumption. And if you don't know what the law of assumption is, I'm just going to break it down. You've probably heard of the law of attraction before. That's very popular. And the law of attraction is basically like your positive and negative thoughts will bring forth positive or negative experiences, and your thoughts and talk and beliefs will create the reality around you, which I 100% believe. But I want to talk about the law of assumption, because the law of assumption is basically the idea of putting yourself into a mindset where you're assuming that you already have whatever it is that you want, right? You're assuming you're already in that, And it's kind of an abstract concept to understand if it's like your first time thinking about it. It can be a little confusing or sound crazy. The point of the law of assumption is to get yourself on the vibrations of whatever it is that you want to happen in your life, and assuming it already happened and living life as if you were already in that state, right? So if your goal is to, be fit and eat healthy, to love yourself, if you're having a hard time with that, if you have these goals and you feel like you're nowhere close to that, it's adopting this mindset of like it's kind of like pretending, like being delusional. Like I know that's a trend right now where everybody's like, oh, being delulu is what, brought me to where I am. And I 100% agree with this, because it's like being delusional is kind of like a parallel concept to the law of assumption, in the way that it is just saying like, you are putting yourself in the state of the fact that you're already there. Like if you are someone who never wakes up early, right? And you're like, oh, I want to wake up early. And you just start to think of yourself and embody this like energy of, oh, I am someone who wakes up early, even if you don't, right? But like over time, kind of having this self-talk and this like self-belief of, oh wow, I love being a morning person. Like being a morning person is so cool. Like waking up early is like such a huge part of my life. And it sounds like a crazy person thing, but the idea is that if you act and believe as if your desired outcomes are already here, it will shape your reality to match that. And I believe this works on like an energetic level. It also works, I think, because it builds your own confidence in the fact, it builds your own trust in the fact of the things happening. And it, like, positive self-talk is known and proven to have such a big impact on the things around you and what you can achieve and how you think about yourself and how you think about the world. So I think on an energetic level and just on a psychological level, it has such a big impact. If you want to look more into the law of assumption, I think the law of assumption is a great practice, and it's a great way to help you get to where you want to be, Or in this case, in the law of assumption, I would say it helps you be where you already are, because the whole point is you're assuming you are where you want to be, avoiding the overall language and thoughts of the fact that you're not where you want to be yet. And I'm such a firm believer in the law of assumption, because the law of assumption just makes all your goals that can seem far distant closer to you. And the only way, I'm going to repeat this so many times, but the only way you're going to achieve your goals is if you think you can achieve them, if you believe in yourself and have the confidence that you can. Until that happens, you're not going to be able to, right? So the law of assumption just helps with that, building that confidence. And I just love it, and I use it all the time. And I want to talk a little bit about operating out of love instead of fear when it comes to, coming into the new year. I think a lot of society and a lot of our everyday actions, struggles and just everything that we do and say a lot of the time operates from fear because of the ego. And we all have the ego, and ego basically is just like the idea of a false selfhood, like that's built up around like this image of how you want to be perceived and how you perceive yourself in this like human form, and like how in terms of like relating to others, how you see yourself, and like your pride. And basically operating out of fear stems from the ego trying to protect itself and keep its place in your life. And operating out of fear means you will have like a lack mindset, where someone would think that if someone were to be operating out of fear, it would look like, constantly coming from a place of feeling like they were lacking something in whatever area it is. And when you're operating out of a place of lack versus abundance, it's kind of like parallels here, where operating from love is like a parallel to, abundance and prosperity and success and full self-belief and this unlimited view of yourself versus the parallel of operating from fear and having this like lack mindset and having limiting beliefs that you are a limited being and that you can only go so far and that things are out of reach and that things aren't attainable and all this stuff. And it's like your ego is protecting itself because your ego fears failure, right? And this is like the logic behind it. Your ego fears failure, and the way to protect itself from dealing with failure is to just avoid any type of situation where failure might occur, right? And this is kind of like, it's like a stupid idea in itself because failure will happen regardless, because failure is a part of life, failure within itself can be defined as different things. And you can look at, like I say, like obviously I still use the word failure because it relates in terms of language, but I don't even think anything is a failure because it's just a redirection and it's just an opportunity to open a different door instead of the door that you wanted to go through. So failure doesn't even really exist when you're operating from love. When you're operating from love, everything is about giving without the need to receive. And when you're operating out of giving without the need to receive, then you're so much more open to trying new things and to putting yourself out there and to be authentic to yourself. If you fear not getting reciprocation when it comes to like, you know, giving your love and being open, and you're operating from a place of fear of not having that reciprocated, then it's just going to limit your own light. Operating from love allows you to spread as much light and be as open and as authentic as possible, and because you're not thinking and worrying about how it'll get back to you or how people will view you, and your ego wants you to feel that way, that not to give, and your ego wants you to dim your light, because if other people don't give it back, then it's going to dim your light more. But in reality, when you're operating from love, that's not even on the table. Like, it's not something you're thinking about. It's because you are just in a space of being so open to spreading your light. Somebody not reciprocating something won't even affect you, because that wasn't the point. The point of spreading your light is not to get it reciprocated. It's to just spread it without any type of necessity for having it reciprocated. Operating from fear, which brings a lack and scarcity mindset, will bring you to a place of not being as open to opportunities, which will limit your ability to be able to reach your goals. Because if you are in a scarcity mindset, for example, and you think you don't have enough money, you think you don't have enough time, you think you don't have enough people in your life, you think you don't have any of those things, it's going to bring you to a place of holding yourself back from your full potential. Because you're going to constantly be thinking about, oh, but I don't have money to go there, so I can't do that. I don't have the time to add this into my life, so I can't do that. And it's just like it brings you into a cycle of perpetually dimming your opportunities and perpetually dimming your potential. And it's just so important to work on getting out of this scarcity mindset that is so prevalent in society. And if you take a minute to step back and listen to the conversations around you, you know, it's sad to say, but like I feel like 70% of people are constantly speaking from a scarcity mindset. So it's just important to just recognize, what words are you telling yourself, and what stories are you saying that are bringing you to further enhance your lack mindset instead of furthering your abundance and love and growth mindset, which will transition perfectly into, you know, how do you work on getting out of this scarcity mindset and lack mindset, to my next tip for the new year. Living it through a place of trusting the process, right? I did a whole podcast on trusting the process, so if you want to listen to that, I'll link it below, but just really quick, I'll go over, you know, trusting the process means like you really understand the divine timing of things and how you are perfectly where you are supposed to be. And it's almost impossible to have a scarcity mindset when you actually fully believe that you are exactly where you're meant to be. You have the money you're exactly meant to have. You have the people in your life that you are meant to be around right now, and that everything is happening perfectly for you, not to you, and that everything has its purpose and you can learn from everything and grow from everything. And trusting the process means that you understand the importance of whatever it is that you're dealing with now, and that you understand the significance of everything that you're being taught. You're learning from everything around you, and you are not in a constant state of thinking about where you should be. That is just not going to help you in any way, right? If you're just constantly thinking about where you should be instead of where you are now, it's just not helping you, unless you're actively trying to, do something in your daily life to further you. But I think the biggest part about trusting the process is being able to be present and see the beauty in everything that is presently around you. And you are doing yourself and this life a huge disservice if you are constantly negating everything that you have going for you right now, because there's so much beauty and light and love around you right in this instant. Like in this moment, there's so much around you that you should be thankful for and you should be grateful for. And learning to trust the process and be present really allows you to give the beautiful things around you the attention it deserves, right? So finding the beauty in the things around you and giving it the recognition it deserves is so important. And like I said, I'm not going to get too into it because I have a whole podcast on it, but truly embodying a mindset of being grateful for everything that you are currently dealing with and your predicaments around you is the number one way of trusting the process, because then you are being able to enjoy your everyday life while still having goals and ambitions, which is so important and, doesn't contradict itself, right? It is not paradoxical to, at the same time, have these dreams and goals and places you want to be, at the same time also appreciate where you are right now and love everything that you're doing and enjoy life and be thankful for the moment. Allow yourself to have the duality to balance the both without getting to, on one side of the spectrum versus the other, which also, ties into enjoying the fruits of your labor, not constantly pushing off doing something and having experiences and hanging out with whoever you want to hang out with. And, it's good to have a good balance of, work and life. And when you're trying to achieve your goals, it's important to be able to really indulge in the beauties of life while still staying on track with your goals. And it's very possible, and everything is about balance at the end of the day, and it all comes back to having that understanding of where exactly the line lies when you're meeting the two. You have to compromise between not putting 100% into one area of you, instead understanding that there are different parts of you that need to be nourished equally, and that you should equally give attention to all of the parts of yourself. My next tip would be, really understanding that it's all about discipline when it comes to implementing new habits into your life. And, I'm all about health and wellness, so I guess my mind's going straight to health-based goals, but it could be in any area of your life. Adding any type of habits, it really is all just about consistency, and consistency only happens with discipline, because no matter how much you love something, there's going to be a day where you don't want to do it. And obviously, not to say you shouldn't take a day off when you need a day off. You have to be self-aware and understand when you need a break and when you need rest. Rest is just equally as important as the work. So that is a huge tip right there. But it's just understanding that when you want to make progress in a lot of your habits that you want to implement, the only way you're going to progress is through constantly showing up. And this means that even if you couldn't show up for one day or 1 week, that's just showing up anyway, and it's not giving up. If you go on a little bender where we're supposed to go to the gym 3 times a week for, the rest of the year, but you missed a week or two and now you're just I'm just going to give up, then, that really, where's the logic in that? You always have the opportunity to pick back up where you left off, right? The fact that you kind of went off the tracks a little does not mean that there's no more for you to do, right? You have to be able to just pick back up where you left off without going through guilt. You know, you have to have self-compassion and understand and hold yourself and hold space for making mistakes and for being imperfect. Holding space for being imperfect is so important because we're all humans. You know, at the end of the day, me and you, we're all here to do the same thing and learn how to live, and it just comes with being imperfect and having things to work on and having things to figure out. It takes like time and energy, and it takes a lot of like trial and error, and it takes, you know, falling off and hopping back on and falling off and hopping back on, and, you know, figuring it out as you go. So allow yourself the space to be imperfect and allow yourself the space to go off tracks a little and be able to hop back on without beating yourself up about it, you know? Like I said, we're coming from a place of love, not fear. So when you're operating from a space of love, that means when you do something that you didn't want to do, or when you didn't do something that you wanted to do, it's still holding love and compassion for yourself no matter what. The last thing we want to do when we're creating goals or habits that we want to implement is to use that as bait to beat ourselves up and to knock ourselves down. That's literally the opposite of what we're trying to do. Why we're making goals and why we're trying to change our mindset is to better our life and uplift ourselves and become more authentically self-loving and become just so self-accepting and, you know, just wanting to live our best life. So the last thing you want to do is use it to beat yourself up, right? So if you ever catch yourself beating yourself up because of a goal that you set, that's like the opposite of what you want to do. Instead, you have to empower yourself to be able to get back up and to motivate yourself to do it even if things don't go as planned, and be able to be your own number one supporter. And discipline is so much more important than motivation, because, you know, if we only relied on motivation, which you probably heard a million times before, but, you know, I need to repeat this to myself daily almost. If I only relied on motivation to do the things that I wanted to do, I wouldn't do anything most of the time, right? It's like very rarely and scarcely that I have, and, you know, most people have motivation to do everything that you want to do, because motivation is just like a fleeting feeling versus discipline, which is like regardless of how you're feeling, with leaving room for, you know, being self-aware enough to understand if you need time or space or whatever. But you know, I'm trying to avoid any type of like really like workaholic or, you know, one way, my way or the highway type of speech, because I don't believe in that. So that's why I keep like kind of doing that. But it's important to be able to get up off the bed and put your gym shoes on and go into your car and drive to the gym, even if you're just feeling like not in the mood, right? As humans, we are very susceptible to instant gratification, and instant gratification is so nice for however long it lasts until it isn't, right? And long-term gratification is so much more fulfilling. Sometimes sitting and laying in bed sounds like a lot more enjoyable than going and working out. It doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying the workout. I still am going to appreciate the whole process of, you know, putting time into myself like that. So just keep your eye on the long-term gratification and the fulfillment that it will bring, and don't rely on the motivation, right? And I'm just going to end this off with saying there is no room in the comfort zone to grow. The comfort zone is like a tiny little bubble, and where you need to be is like outside of the bubble. So the only way to grow is to get yourself out of the comfort zone, pop that bubble, and it's not going to feel comfortable. That's the hardest part. It's not going to feel safe, because comfortable feels safe, and you have to start getting used to not feeling as safe and feeling kind of vulnerable, and just taking actions that will take care of your future self. You know, I think a good thing that helps me do things that I want to do is just thinking, oh, like I love me and I'm taking care of me in the future. It's like kind of envisioning yourself as a separate person that you just love so much, and you yourself in the future is like a different person, and you're just like, oh, I want to do this for them so that in the future they'll have food prepped, and so when she gets home from work, she doesn't have to cook a whole meal. Like, the meal will be ready because I love her so much. Treat yourself like as if you're like your own significant other. That's like the biggest thing, like just looking at yourself as if you deserve everything that you're giving yourself. That brings me to the end of like my tips. Breathe deeply and live mindfully, and you can achieve it all. Nothing is stopping you but yourself.